This is the Pure Black and Queer wow, panel. I am so happy to be here and I'm a little anxious. So just to introduce myself, I am Reggie Eaton. I use they, them pronouns, and I identify as queer, trans, non-binary. I also identify as Black Asian, and I am on the National Student Council with GLSEN. So I'll pass it off to Freddie.
Thank you for that, Reggie. Hi, everyone. My name is Freddie Taharka, and yeah, I'm from a National Student Council member from with GLSEN from Florida, and I'm a senior in high school as well. I am Black and white identifying, biracial is what I tell everyone. And yeah, I am identify as queer with most comfortably. Even I've used a lot of different, labels and things, but queer is kind of where I feel most at home. And yeah, I think that's everything. So I'm excited for this. So I'll pass it on to anyone who wants to go next.
Hey everybody, I'm Jamond. I use he, him pronouns, and I identify as a queer Black dad. That's my life. I'm here in Cincinnati, where I serve on the management team or board for GLSEN Cincinnati. So happy to be here, happy to meet everybody.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bria Rice. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I identify as a Black lesbian. I got my master's at social work at Wichita State University, where I became an intern with GLSEN Kansas. And since then, I have been with them for 3 years as a student coordinator.
All right, I'll jump in. My name is Melanie Willingham Jaggers. I use she and they pronouns interchangeably. I am the incoming interim executive director at GLSEN. As of Monday, I'll be the interim executive director. And how do I identify? My political identity is a Black woman. I identify as a non-binary, gender expansive queer, and all of that means and beyond. So that's who I am. Good to be here.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves. I'll be moderating this panel, and our first question is, what does Black History Month mean to you, and how do you celebrate this month?
I'm off mute, so maybe I should start.
All right.
So Black History Month to me feels just like the culmination. It is a reason to act out in the complete pride and joy of what it means to be Black. For me, I always bring my Blackness and my queerness with me wherever I go. And so what it means is that I find the time to celebrate through ridiculous memes, through dance parties, through my favorite jams, to celebrating Black queer icons, like you might see behind me. It's just a reason to live fully and bring fully the magic and the history and the struggle and the triumph of Blackness in this country and beyond into every single space, and dare people not to smile and nod when that happens.
Oh, I love that. Totally. I think I definitely resonate, with that vision, as well. And I think for me personally, it's kind of just the culmination, of remembering the past and how that inform, the present in terms of Blackness, and just, when you add the intersection of queerness with that to the identity, and it's just celebration of that, and then remembering how our roots and how the work that we do as Black people, and just that culminate in our society, right? If that makes sense, right? And then how we can go towards the future and make more towards Black liberation and things. So that's what I love, Black History Month, and just Black works like that, as well, Melanie, of celebrating, Black creators, and it's like, oh wow, the person is Black and doing all these really cool things, and they're like, I can, well, that's cool, right? So maybe I can do something like that. So I can relate to that.
So Black History Month has been a lot of things over the years. You know, I grew up in public school, so it used to be the 1 month we got to talk about people that looked like me, and it was just a few people that we talked about. So then I got older, got a little fun with my friends, and that's when Black History got to be all of our inside jokes became outside jokes and the memes, and you know, it's a lot of fun, but I'm a dad. So now I'm like, I've become my grandparents and my parents, and Black History Month is because the rest of the world is having these conversations that I have all the time. I'm like on 10 with my kid. So she is learning it all. We're reading all of the books. And it's really, I love to collect books. I love to buy books. And now they're on display. The books with my little girl on the cover of them everywhere in the world now. We can go to Walmart, we can go to Target, Kroger, wherever we go. If she sees a book and says, that looks like me, it happens. It really happens. It feels like a commercial. But when we have those moments, I buy the books and we sit down and we talk about them. So really, Black History Month is an opportunity for me to invite the rest of the world to be as Black as I am all year round.
Yeah, Jamal, that was a really good point. Being a person of color who grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, I dealt with like a lot of microaggressions and racism. So Black History Month forced these institutions to teach Black history. So for me, Black History Month represented a time I was surrounded by my people's history, which was not a norm for that town, that community. So it put them out of their comfort zone. But for me now, it is moving out of that town. It is a celebration for my people. So it is different.
I think for myself, it's more of a time to step back and because I am light skinned, I definitely like notice that privilege. It's a time for me to step back and let other people go in front of me and talk about the history. And I love learning like history as I'm still like evolving as a person. But I also focus on like reparation this month. Like this month especially, I take care of myself, I take care of my people, I take care of my aunt who's currently in the other room being like, leave me alone. I'm like, I gotcha. Have your time. But this month especially, I give back to people who've helped me grow as like a young Black queer. And I make sure that those who need the help get the support through mutual aid, which like brings me to my next question. What can organizations like GLSEN do to better serve Black populations?
I think something GLSEN can do is first recognizing some of the biases that may be going on at a national level. Who are the faces in the office? A big thing is just having a representation of more leaders of color. And I don't mean tokenizing individuals, but allowing them to come in and being their authentic self.
All right. I love this like in Zoom. I love having those little interactions of like, are you gonna go? But I think from an NSC, National Student Council perspective, including more projects relating to Blackness and not just Black History Month. Started that book list, which is coming out soon, just a little sneak peek to everyone. But having more spaces other than what's created by students and one set month could be really helpful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, Reggie. And I think jumping off the same points, I think like being actively anti-racist and like engaging in, work to promote, like Blackness and in all forms and, celebrating that. And I think it's really important. And I think mutual aid is something that I think is kind of really needs to be highlighted by organizations. I think that can, along with their programs happening, that they're doing that are also helping uplift Black voices and things like that. I think mutual aid will also get us further to that. So yeah.
So with organizations like GLSEN, it comes down, for me, it becomes an issue of integrity. And I'm always looking, especially during Black History Month, I'm always looking for words and actions to line up. So what is it that you said that you were gonna do? And in what ways have you done that for the Black people that are within your organization? How do people have access to your organization or through your organization to become better and to better connect and carry out what you said your vision was? I think it's very specific, and a lot of times we try to respond real broad and we're like, yeah, this is what you can do for Black people, but what is it that you already do, and how do Black people respond or interact with that specifically?
And I'll jump in here to say that from the national office and from the executive level of leadership, I take this question really seriously, and I really appreciate the reflection. I appreciate the question being asked. I appreciate the reflections that I've heard so far. And I'd say two things. We are launching a new strategic framework at GLSEN, which I'm super excited about, which is why I like nerd out about this stuff, which makes me perfect for this position, because it's like, okay, yeah, sure, it's super exciting. But in seriousness, I would say that our first pillar is about achieving racial, gender, and disability justice outcomes. And that's both inside our organization throughout all of our processes at all of our levels. And it's also in the US education system, right? So these are big and transformative goals. And I don't think that you don't set a strategic framework with some stuff you can reach from where you are right now, right? Or achieve next week or tomorrow. What we're doing is setting a North Star, right? We're calling ourselves and we're calling for all of us to make sure that we are building systems inside our house and out in the world that achieve these outcomes. And then I would say the other thing, which is, I think it is deeply rooted in racial justice, and it's also kind of including and beyond it. But for me, the thing that gets me super jazzed is this idea that we can create an education system, we can create a world, a society that's liberated, right, free from the harms, right, that face all of us, particularly Black folks, particularly queer folks, and those of us at that intersection, in this world and in our education system. And we can make our education system a liberating experience. So we come out more whole, more close to ourselves, and more close to each other through the process, right? So this is the North Star. This is where GLSEN is going. And we know that we don't get there by chewing up, grinding up, and spitting out our people along the way. We know we get there only by walking together. We go as fast as our relationships will allow us, and not a iota faster, right? So there is a, and this is like a little bit to GLSEN's horn, but not that much, right? It's like, we've known for a while that we've got work to do. We've got growth to do. We've known this since 2017, and we've been doing it like fits and starts and until about 2019, when we kind of got our sea legs under us. And we've been going deliberately, slowly, and also with fits and starts, right? Continually trying to perfect it as we go since 2019. And so there is no insta justice, right? GLSEN's been around for 30 years. We don't get out of a thing that we built over 30 years in 18 months, right? Or even 2 years, right? What we do is we go at the speed of trust. We go at the speed of our relationships. We work really deliberately to build brick by brick, what we've been calling internally a rainbow road to justice. It's corny as hell, but it's real, right? So anyway, that's what I would say. It's like, I really do see this. I see our purpose and our success as deeply interconnected and intersectional. Yes, it's about serving Black folks and Black community. And frankly, in this country, you actually can't get to justice until you get to justice for Black folks, because this country is built on stolen land and stolen labor, right? So when we contend with that, that's when we get to better outcomes for Black people.
I want to just add something at the end of this. I've been here since 2019, and GLSEN is such a different organization than it was when I first started on the National Student Council. And a lot of the internal things I'm still learning about, and I still love to like hear about it. So yeah, I really appreciate that, Melanie. The next question is, what tangible actions can non-Black folks take to dismantle, hold up, this is a lot for me to read, white supremacy, show solidarity with Black people, and demonstrate a true commitment to anti-racism?
Okay. I would say more allyship, make yourself uncomfortable, and use your privilege to help advocate for my people. It's pretty simple.
So I'll say I address most things through a three-prong approach of listen, share, and connect. I think for me, I am a storyteller and a community builder. So I tell my story to anybody who will listen, and there's enough information in my story that will tell you a lot around, what happens to queer Black youth and adults here in this country. And I know that I've shared mine, right? And I know that so many other people have shared theirs. So the listening part is listening to what's already out there. And I think a first thing is to ask a question, right? How do I? And my response is listen to what's already out there, connect with the people that are around you, and then share. No, it might not be your own experience. And listen, that's a slippery slope. I don't want you oversharing either, especially as Black History Month. So appropriately share. And I think that because like I said, I'm wired for narrative, and I believe in when I share my story, there are parts of my story that reveal parts of your story. So when that comes up, really lean into that. I think a lot of times our immediate response is, well, I wasn't there. That was a long time ago. It had nothing to do with me. But I use the example often of the people who integrated schools just 50 or so years ago are still going around telling those horribly traumatic stories of how hard that was and how they were spat upon. But we haven't heard a lot of stories of people who will just say, my mom spit on my friend Ruby Bridges in kindergarten, and I don't know why. That's healing. It's really healing to just say, like, I had a part in it. I was there. I saw it happen. Even if I didn't do anything, even if I don't know, it's the listening and the sharing when they go together that causes us to be able to connect at the end of it. And when we connect, I think that we're able to do greater and better because we're connected to each other. And I know that sounds pie in the sky, but that's kind of how I live my life. I share vulnerably. I listen to others when they do the same, and I try to connect because I think that we're wired and connected together. And when we embrace that connection, we can do good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, chills. That was something else. I feel that with the connection, I thrive off of that, like the energy, between humans and just talking with other people, talking with other humans, and I think that's like at its root, like the how you can reach beyond, right? By talking with other humans and understanding the differences, and then how we can move forward and help be better as a collective. And I think that's so important, so I totally get that. I think I just blanked on the question. Oh yes, okay, there you go. There's the question. Yeah, so I think as a whole, it's about, well, giving space for people to share their experiences, but also listening deeply, understanding, and then leaning into, if you're going to educate as a non-GOC person, like lean into the uncomfortability, right? Because we feel that all the time. Like we can be feeling that uncomfortability. Just imagine if you actually Black and then you uncomfortable when you white talking about Black things. You know what I mean? So just imagine when. So yeah, that's kind of a little insight into the the world. And I think that needs to be talked about. So if
I'll share this question because I know that Melanie has to hop off soon. So what are your thoughts on some systems of discrimination that manifest within the Black community?
All right, I'll answer this and I gotta pop off. My apologies if I happen to leave early. Well, let me just quickly tack on an answer to that previous question, which is like, what can non-Black folks do? 3 things. Be in authentic relationship with Black people. Like where you are not, like it's not your coworker, it's not that you have to be there, it's not your teacher, it's like not the nice lady who picks up your garbage. It's like, no, like have a friend, right? And it's like, and in that situation, you actually have to be worth the friendship, right? And so what does it mean to be in an authentic relationship with Black people? That's 1. 2, get your people, right? You have like y'all, I think everybody out there that is, not Black has a racist uncle or some other relation. Get your people. And then thirdly, I would say, do your own work, right? Handle your own stuff and don't make a Black person your mule while you do it, right? You do your work, you process, you do all that kind of stuff. That's great. Don't make a Black person responsible for your progress on this front. So what was the question that I was supposed to be answering?
What are your thoughts on some systems of discrimination that manifest in the Black community, i.e. queerphobia or colorism, and how do we combat them?
Yeah, I think everything comes back to settler colonialism and white supremacy, right? Like we know that in nature and in pre-colonial connections to ourselves and each other, right? Gender was fluid. Relationships were open, like our relationship with the earth and with our surroundings was not one of extraction, was not one of monetizing, was not one of control. And so, there's a way in which when we are talking about Blackness and Black liberation, it absolutely has everything to do with freeing ourselves from understanding that whiteness, colonialism, like the binary of things that like really suit and serve capitalism, right? Because like in capitalism, women do this and men do this, and it makes everyone money. It's like we have to actually confront that, dismantle it, and attack it wherever it shows up. So this is not to discount the ways in which our people are sometimes, like all our skin folk ain't our kinfolk, right? All of our people don't always have our backs. And I think that when we keep our, like eyes set on freedom, we really do understand that the purpose of all of this is undoing the thing that binds us all, and that's white supremacy, that's capitalism, right? That's settler colonialism. And so it's addressing that and attacking that is, I think, at the root of like, yeah, the colorism, yeah, the queerphobia, yeah, the trans exclusion, that's all that stuff, it's all bound up in this bigger net that's poison, and it's choking us all. With that, I gotta run. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Melanie. Bria, were you going to share?
Yeah. So, yeah, I loved the answer, but in my opinion, for example, once the Black Lives Matter movement started to magnify the lives of the LGBTQ, the support of the Black community dropped. Ways that we combat that is checking our own biases that we may have. Even in a marginalized group of people, we have our own biases and forms of discrimination. We have to recognize that, just that because there's a room full of Black people, there are still people of color in that room that still do not feel safe. And we have to recognize that.
I think I'm gonna answer this one now, like hearing from everyone. Gosh, there's a lot to like unpack in general, because this question can go on with like Islamophobia and like xenophobia and just everything related to that. I definitely, how I think of like combating the systems of discrimination and system of oppression is sort of relating back to the last question of connecting. I am a person that would rather hear a story than have to read it in a book. And I definitely would rather someone tell me their story than have to read an autobiography, or if they're not comfortable, like reading, looking them up and like Googling it that way. But then also, like a lot of what everyone said, do some like self-reflecting, and notice your internal biases and educate those who you can, because not everyone's going to want that. But I think within like the Black community, it's really interesting to recognize that there is a lot of queer phobia. And um, I've been recently reading a lot about like Black experiences and Black queer experiences and how much they have to go through. And I've never noticed that. I've never noticed that until I was reading about it. And in that way, I do recognize that privilege of not having to go through the queer phobia, because my experience has always been a positive one. And that in itself is unlearning the biases, is doing the work that I need to do because I know it exists. Yeah, I think that's really all I had to say. Is there anyone else who had to say anything?
I'll chime in. I think that one of the things that I always say is it's not exceptionally worse in the Black community. I think in our world, it's important to recognize that, you know, living in a capitalist society, somebody has to be on the bottom and nobody wants it to be them. So even within people groups, people work really, really hard to make sure somebody, you know, comes after them or behind them or falls under them. And on this line, it's sort of like you fold race over sexuality, and guess who wins? I try to stay away from MLK quotes, especially during my Black History Month, because you get so loaded down with them. But I love, there's a speech where he's talking about when he was jailed, and he's talking to the white prison guard or whatever that was coming around, and he asked the man, he said, "Well, how much money do you make?" And the man responded, he's like, "Well, dude, you ought to be out here marching with us." Because here you are in a situation where you're poorer than the people we're out here marching for, you know, so that they can get their rights and they can have their fair access. But because you cling to your whiteness, you believe yourself better. And I think that in our situation, being queer makes us other in some space, and it's an easy target, right? But instead of looking at it and going, it's exceptionally bad in this community, recognizing that this is just what it looks like, because capitalism requires somebody to be at the bottom. So instead of getting mad at an individual, I'm looking at the system issue. And like Melanie said, until we dismantle all of it, it's going to be.
I was about to swear. Oh gosh, I really mess with that. And I really support that. And I think the idea of capitalism having all of these like levels is all rooted in capitalism. And I think that's like the main takeaway. Um, Switching topics. Um, with the recent election of Joe Biden, I'll ask first, what are you hopeful for? Like in general, what are you hopeful for after this election?
I'm unmuted, so I'll go. Separate of the election, because I don't think that it was the election that gives me this hope, right? I think that I am hopeful that through the suffering of this pandemic and through the loss and the difficulty and recognizing that a hard decision was made for some people during the election cycle, who to vote for. It wasn't hard for me, but you know, I recognize that that was a lot. Our country went through a lot to get there, mostly because of the way the political system works and like incentivizes the craziness, right? So, you know, it's the divide happens. And I'm hoping that now that the presidential election is over, yes, I'm grateful for who's in the office of the president right now, but regardless of who was there, I think what's most important right now for me, I'm hoping that we can get about to some healing and some change. And I work in education, and I am hopeful that some money rolls down to support some of the initiatives that have been defunded, or that to get the work done that needs to get done. I think that I'm wary of anybody that believes anybody that can be elected to live in that space on Pennsylvania Avenue is going to be able to save the day. So I'm wary of any like great hope, because the power should be with the people and hasn't been, because we've defaulted and believe that whoever is in office, it's either 100% their fault or they're 100% going to fix whatever's going on. Like, we either want to blame or expect somebody to fix. And I'm hopeful that because so much was at stake and so many people came out to vote, that enough of those people were activated. I'm also hopeful that because so many people did the work of getting people not just registered to vote, not just coming out to vote, but like our climate has shifted drastically uh, because of a lot of work at the hands of like organizers and responsible people who just really, really cared to get people to think about the political process and to think about themselves within it, and to see themselves as people who can either run for office or even just call the person who was elected and say, hey, my name is Jamon and I don't like what y'all are doing. I want to see more of that. And I want to see, and I'm hopeful that we will spend the next 4 years growing that number and not watching it shrink. The number of people that are involved, that are speaking up, that are championing the rights and the needs of young people, particularly those who fall in the margins, like immigrant children and queer and trans youth that we know are struggling specifically in schools. And rights that should be theirs have to be fought for. And it's still an uphill climb. We didn't win anything. It's not over. It's not better. I think that we got somebody in who talks a little bit more like we talk, or who believes a little bit more like we believe, but that's a person that also has to be called to the carpet periodically. That's a person who also has to be challenged to do what we think is going to be best, particularly for young people. So the thing that I'm hopeful about is the thing that I'm wary of too. I'm hopeful that more of us will get involved, but I'm wary of enough of us thinking that we did our part already. So that's it.
I'll take this. I think that I was sort of like in a state of shock when he was first elected, because for me it was more of a, okay, we're getting out of this really difficult situation with a pandemic, a 4-year, I'm just going to call it, I don't even know how to mention the past presidency without like getting vile. But my dog's barking. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but give me a second. All right. I'm hopeful that actual work gets done more than, like you said, Jamond, just registering to vote. I hope that like more people are active in politics, especially myself and like youth like myself, because we can be a high number of voices, yet no one wants to participate. No one either knows how to or has the capacity to. And I feel that those who can don't, because they're scared of speaking up. And I hope that more people are empowered to do the work and to, like you said, Jamon, keep doing the work, because that's what we need. And then I'll tack on what I'm wary of: people getting complacent in the political system and relying fully on that. Though it is a big like part of our lives, I'm scared that people are going to girl bossify, if that makes any sense. I don't know if y'all know what I mean by that, but make it so that they're icons or that they're heroes or that they are like celebrities, when in reality they are supposed to help us and not hinder our growth, our livelihoods, our everything. I feel like really scared that, at least with like what I see online, that's going to happen. And it's especially happening with like my generation. Like they iconize and make people these like heads and like beautiful like portraits basically, but never, like they fail to recognize the truth or the difficult parts of that person or that role. Because just in general, a presidential role controls more than just our country. It controls like wars happening in the Middle East. It controls the budget. It controls a lot. And I think I'm nervous and like scared to see where this goes and see how it plays out. Um, if that makes any sense, let me know if I need to elaborate anything.
No, it does. And it brought something to mind to me because I think the opposite is often true too. I think we spent the last 4 years, talking about how terrible, you know, 45 was. And I'm not saying he did anything great for me. I'm really just naming the fact that he wasn't this aberration, right? I think that he was more representative of our neighbors, some of our aunties and uncles, our classmates and teachers than we wanted to give him credit for. We wanted to make him the bad one so that at the end, I guess on January 20th at 11:59 a.m., we were just going to sing Brand New Day and dance in the street like when Dorothy killed the Wicked Witch of the West, and it was just going to all be better. It's work. And if we try to put that all on him, like he was just the bad one and not representative of a lot of bad that has gone on for 400 plus years, then we aren't giving light to the fact that there's work that we all have to do. And it also like makes somebody look like they're about to be a hero and they just aren't. They are not. He's going to fail us in many, many ways because he's human and he's beholden to an entire political system that still needs a lot of change. So it is what it is. It's work.
No, yeah, no, I resonate with that, honestly. Yeah, like when I think about, when I think about mostly the system, the system as itself, and especially, with 45, like you said, people, that's the bad guy, right? That's bad. And so when it's kind of, you don't look at the past, like what created that, like it's kind of, it wasn't just that he just rose up, everything was great beforehand. And a lot of people kind of get into that thing like that. That one person, that one person, messed it up, and now like, everything was great beforehand, and then now that person's gone, it's gonna be great afterwards. It's kind of like like there's system created this, so it's maybe it's the system that's wrong, that work needs to be done within that, and just because that's out, the system is still, the thing that created it is still there and it needs work, and it's also, I think that the systems in place are inherently against the people, are not listening to the collective is kind of very, because it's so intrinsically tied with capitalism, like you were saying, and how all the different systems are kind of, harm is always being done inadvertent, or like you have to find a way to get, like it, yeah. That's how it's like an icky pig, right? But I that's what all right. What I am wary of is people going back to sleep. That's what in terms of, people were like very paying attention to 45, but now that he's gone, they're just like, okay, I'm good now. I was my activism, that was it. And they think they're going to be taken care of, even though there's still a lot of work to be done, like you all were saying. But also what I'm thinking, what I'm like hoping for is that like more people will be attuned and still participating, hopefully. So we'll have to see. But I still have hope. It's hard. You know, you can't give up that hope. Just, yeah, so.
Okay. Follow-up question to that one is what specific issues, oh wait, hello. What are some specific issues the Black queer community is facing that you want the Biden administration and our newly elected representatives to address?
I'm not sure specifically like what bills are. Everyone hear me good? Going on a national level, but just like specifically here in Kansas, just the the equality for transgender individuals. So hopefully, um, they'll get they'll be heard and seen more with this administration than ever before, and their voices will come up for the forefront for these next 4 years, and we'll be hearing more from them and hearing conversations and getting more equality when it comes to that.
I think I'm going to take it more of a state level because we have some new elected officials. Um, but oh gosh, education has been really difficult, and funding for education has been really difficult. Um, I hope that within like the Black queer community, education and sex reproductive rights become more like, how do I say, understood and not battled, because every issue can be someone's issue, if that makes any sense. Any marginalized community is affected by any action or inaction that of the presidency and our local governments. I hope that with new elected officials and this new administration, change actually happens and it's not just battling back and forth of what is good, what is bad. I hope that there is more conversations for, I think my main focus is education because I'm trying to think of my last 3-4 years in school, and there's a noticeable difference of intolerance, inequity, and hatred, I guess is like the word I would use. Um, and I hope with not to like, oh, what's the word? I'm sorry, all my words are gone right now. Not to like backtrack, but I hope with the new like elected officials and as well as um, our new president, I hope that the small communities start to take control. The small black and queer communities start to take control of what they can do and organize and create education pieces for their communities. And I hope that like now that we're quote unquote safe, because we're not safe, I mean, capitalism is going to eat us up one day. I hope that we have those times and spaces to create change and to work together now that we're somewhat safer to do it. It's not going to be hated on fully as I hope. But that was a really great ramble. It really wasn't, but is there anyone else that wanted to comment this? If not, we'll go to our final question.
Yeah, I'd like to comment. My thought immediately goes to health outcomes because we know through like data and research, shout out to GLSEN research especially, but we know through all of the data that's out there that LGBTQ folks think of any negative health outcome and start to multiply that for folks in the LGBTQ community. And then looking at that data close, even closer, those conditions are exacerbated for folks that are Black or brown and LGBTQ. We're talking about less of us have access to primary care doctors, less of us feel safe even if we do have insurance going to the doctor, less of us report feeling like our doctor understands us and our health conditions, less of us participate in regular routine things that can keep us well. We know that 1 in 2 Black men will be diagnosed with, 1 in 2 Black men who have sex with men will be diagnosed with HIV if the trends continue the way that they're going. So looking at the very, very, very disparaging health data and looking at how difficult those situations are for us, I'm hopeful that anybody that's elected anywhere can do something, right? But I'm hopeful that those of us that are here that know these things so well, I think a lot of times we feel comfortable talking about these things. Like I shout these stats out, y'all are like, yeah, I read it, I know it. I think a lot of us have a work to do in educating like our friends and our immediate communities. And that's what I mean, to go back to your earlier question about this past election. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I really do. I think that it'll be great if they, pass all the great laws, do all of the great things, but somebody's got to be able to say it out loud and say, hey, it needs to happen in order to get somebody moving. I think about for GLSEN, one of the things that we talk about in schools is making sure we have enumerated policies. And today in the House, when they voted, only 3 Republicans voted to support the bill to extend civil rights protections specifically to LGBTQ individuals. Like, so with all of the civil rights acts and things that we've had, it's kind of understood that those things translate, it probably wouldn't hold up in court, but people are looking for enumerated policies. The same way I go into schools and tell them that's what's needed is what we're looking at in Congress. And there's still 200 plus people who sat in that chamber and said, nah, I think that that's excessive. It's an uphill climb. It really, really is. And I think that for me, it centers on health, because if we can't be alive, we can't tell you what we need. So if we can't do what we need to do to be well, then we can't do what we need to do to be alive. So I think for me, it's starting with the really, really serious health disparities that exist within our community, and access especially.
I definitely agree with that. And then I'll go to our final question, or final thoughts, final question. What does Black queer liberation look like to you? I'll go first because I immediately thought of it. Rest. Rest is what liberation looks like to me. One of the organizations that I follow is called the NAP Ministry. Come on, yeah. Rest is liberation is just like my mindset and has been. And on social media, I post a good night post of one of their posts to being like, you can't work until you're rested. You can't work on an empty battery. I hope that both the Black community and the queer community and then the intersections in between, we have a chance to rest after fighting for our basic rights. I hope that's what liberation looked like for me, being able to actually take a nap and not have to start something new, another organization or another project. It's take a nap and relax and be with friends.
What does liberation look like to me? Okay, I say it is exhausting to explain why I love the way I love. So for me, just being accepted for who I am and who I love without question. That's what liberation looks like to me.
totally. No, I resonate with, I think, just being free to be myself, and that is 100% valid, you know. The- when throughout, you know, throughout society, it's supported, and like it shouldn't be that much disparages in the data, you know, and that we all have equal opportunity to, you know, do things and just live our lives, right? And it's no real, you know, and I can embrace my culture and be, you know, in society, and that's respected upon in all fields, right? Um, and and yeah, that's kind of.
So for me, liberation looks like frolicking and playing. And by playing, I mean time spent without purpose, just being. Uh, but I want that space to be free of performance. Like I shouldn't have to perform my blackness, my queerness, my humanity, my being American. I think so much of what we do is based on some sort of standard or expectation or norm. I want to be able to live outside of those things in the just because. I think about my great grandmother who used to just sit on her porch and sip lemonade, and she knew all of her neighbors, and nobody asked her why she did it. You know, she did that in my neighborhood. People go, you know, you're always out here. That's a little different, but because times have changed a bit. But I think the freedom to just be is such a beautiful thing, and I think on one side you've got the performance side where I'm trying to do it right, and then on the other side it's the explanation. It's the, oh my god, how do I respond when people ask me if this is my real hair, or how people ask me, you know, like what kind of sex I prefer, or you know what private parts I have if I've disclosed that I'm trans, you know what I mean? Like there's so much explanation that people feel as though they're owed for people's very existence. And liberation looks like freedom from that. Freedom to just be without explanation or defense of being, and without expectation or prescribed performance of being. So that's liberation for me.
I want to thank you all for being here. I am very moved just by y'all's like just words and energy. And I hope you have a great evening, especially because it's Thursday. I don't know about y'all. Thursdays are like really weird for me. But it feels like a Friday, but it's a Thursday. But I really do appreciate you all for being here. And I thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
You.
Everyone.